It's the E-Water Show.
It's the E-Water Show. It's the E-Water Show. E-Water Show. E-Water Show. E-Water Show. It's the E-Water Show. E-Water Show. It's the E-Water Show. It's the E-Water Show. E-Water Show. E-Water Show. E-Water Show. It's the E-Water Show. E-Water Show. E-Water Show.
Yes. You are listening to the E-Water Show on E-Water Radio. So, tonight, like I said, I promise you, I have something really, really special for you. And we are actually about to bring this gentleman on. His name is Mark Strickland. Works for a company called All Access Media Group. I can't even go into detail how many records they have worked and they have broken, and artists they've interviewed, and artists he's interviewed, and his staff. He's an incredible gentleman, and yes, I am a little bit emotional because I have an extreme amount of respect for him as a person and also as a journalist. So let me introduce him. I'd like to introduce Strickland. Mark, are you there?
Hello, Ed. Yes, I'm here. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Pleasure to be with you.
Beautiful. Now,
thank you for the kind words.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. That was really nice.
It's the truth. That's all. I try to tell the truth in my life. But no,
it's always the best policy.
Before we jump into the topic, that you and I will be discussing, I played a lot of older rock music, a lot of, I would say, vintage classic, and I wanted to save some of the newer stuff, for as we go through the show. Rock it's such a, what is the word I want to look for, that I'm looking for? It is very specific, but they have so many different, subcategories. Can you break down just in general what are some of the subcategories that there are when it comes to rock music?
Well, I can give you a general idea, but boy, it gets really deep. You can go into to goth and death metal and all that stuff too. But just off the bat here, just want to clarify one thing. I have been working for All Access Music Group for the past 20 years, and I was there when they first got started out of Joel Denver's spare bedroom, and it's been an amazing run. And earlier this month, I actually left the company, and it's been a kind of a emotional month because this company's been a big part of my life, and watching it grow into what it became was amazing. It was an amazing experience. Joel Denver had this vision way back in 1995 in the infancy of the internet. And for the people who are listening who are not necessarily in the music business, what All Access is, allaccess.com is the URL if you want to go look at it. But what All Access is a radio industry trade magazine. But Joel Denver had the vision to put that online. And he was the leader in this space, and it just blew up. Because in the past, let's say the other radio trades were still printing, we'd get a news story. Many of the people there worked at other trades like Radio and Records and Hits and Album Network, and we'd get a news story, and we would have to write it, print it, mail it, and radio would receive it a few days later. And this includes printing the charts. So what has happened with the internet and this evolution that we've all been experiencing in this last 20 years, now all that's online. The charts are changing minute by minute. The news story can go up in 5 minutes, and we can send out a bulletin to all of our readers. And people don't have to wait for the news. It's like instant. And this was the space that we dominated and still dominate. And eventually we developed a digital download service which delivers the music to radio stations in a high-quality, uncompressed format, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you go to allaccess.com, you can see what we do, and then there's internet advertising. We would promote records on a retainer basis and just basically help the record labels move their songs up the chart. And it was a great thrill to be a part of some big artists, Adele and Train and Ed Sheeran and some other big artists. So it was like you're all over the place. You're writing a story, you're breaking a record, you're calling a radio station, you're doing an ad, you're updating content. It was just such a broad, well-rounding experience for me. What I'm doing now, some years back I started a small internet business called Listen to Music Incorporated. And it did okay for a while, and it was kind of a part-time thing. And due to changes in the internet advertising dollars, I guess you might say, the dollars that come in for internet advertising have decreased. So that's kind of slowed down and fizzled, and I'm looking to do something different with that property, that domain that I have. And right now I'm working on a sharing application that I'd like to develop. And so that means I'm going to be going back to update my skills, and I want to learn a bunch of new programming languages and product development, MySQL and PHP and things like that. But anyway, that's kind of to give you a background of what All Access is and what I've been doing and what I'm going to be doing and where I'm going. So that's, if we're predicting the future here, that's kind of me predicting my future. I sat down today and I thought, okay, what's the future of rock music, and what's the future of music in general? And I thought, well, how far in the future are we going to go? 50 years, who knows? But back to your original question. The rock genres, I mean, if you go back to rock and roll in its infancy and Bill Haley and the Comets and Chuck Berry, it's kind of come a long way. And all along the way, it's fragmented off into a lot of different subgenres. But I think the best way to look at this is to look at all the radio stations out there that that are in each city, say, for example, or on the internet, like you, and on satellite. And all of the different subgenres and categories and different styles of music that, depending on what your mood is, you can listen to whatever you're in the mood for. After the 60s, we got into rock, in the 70s, and the 60s were about a big movement and people connecting with the revolution that was going on then. And in the 70s, we had a revolution in technology where, like Les Paul, the guitarist who also invented the multi-track recording device that was so revolutionary, and all of a sudden, Sgt. Pepper was recorded on 4-track, and then all of a sudden you had 8 tracks and 16 and 24, and now with digital technology and MIDI, you've got, pretty much unlimited. So then we got into the 80s, and that sound changed too, because all of a sudden synthesizers evolved, and we had, we used to go back. I took a class in college, and we had a Moog synthesizer. You used to have to put a patch cord in and turn the dial, and then tweak a bunch of knobs, and you'd finally get the sound you want. Well, then somebody came with the genius idea to make a preset. It's like, okay, there's the sound I want. Make it a preset. Now you just have to push the button, and then you didn't have to use all that, knob tweaking and everything. And now we've come into, loops and digital recording has gone from the tape. Some people still use tape, but the tape to the digital realm, and it's made it easier and less expensive to record a record.
Right.
And, just the sky is the limit. I mean, when you go into a studio now, and it's just, things are so sophisticated that all you really have to worry about is your creativity. You don't have to splice tape. You don't have to, worry about editing and doing overdubs endlessly. You can just punch right in, and the musician has evolved. The recording artist has evolved to the point where it's just all they have to worry about is their creativity and coming up with some good lyrics and connecting with the audience. Now you're also doing that, and you're doing social media, and you're trying to get as many fans as you can, and that's really what the bottom line is now, about getting as many fans as you can. And so anyway, where rock fits into this, long story longer, is that
take your time.
Well, yeah, it's been an amazing journey in my lifetime. I tell you, I've seen a lot of changes. In the 50s and 60s, we had like basically three formats. There was country, there was pop, and there was middle of the road, they called it. Remember that, Ed?
Yes, I do.
And then in the 70s, we evolved into, rock got really big, and album-oriented rock, and the classic, what we now call classic rock stations, playing Led Zeppelin and everything from Aerosmith to ZZ Top, were dominating in the 70s and early 80s, and then we had the rock of the 80s with the new wave, and a lot, like I said, a lot of the changes in technology brought that about, and that was like a second British Revolution, and then these stations have stayed around. I mean, these heritage stations. Our rock editor Ken Anthony recently did a special on Riff in Detroit, WRIF, and I would definitely Google that up or look it up on All Access. It's a really great article. He did a really great job on this, and he went into the history of Riff. And, disco was around, and rock survived disco, rock survived the new wave, and eventually in the 90s, we had the Seattle sound, which I call the Seattle sound, and other people call grunge, and I've been told by people in Seattle that only people outside of Seattle call it grunge. But anyway, so I'm calling it the Seattle sound. And, bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden. And so then we had all these new alternative rock stations in the 90s. And rock had fragmented from the album-oriented rock and the classic rock. It became classic rock. And then, so there was different flavors. You had classic rock, and you had alternative rock of the 80s, and then you had, this new sound. And a lot of stations fragmented away from that. And then came the boy bands and the teen divas and American Idol and every other contest talent show that you can imagine. And I think most people who are alive right now, even if you were born back in 2000, remember that evolution to where we are now. I think they're bringing back American Idol this year, in the future, and let's see. It's been an amazing ride, hasn't it?
Yes.
We come a long way. Rock has come a long way, and it can really fragment into more genres. Speed metal and blues, and just there's so much. But the basic rock formats at radio are heritage rock, which is the classic rock, the Led Zeppelin and ZZ Top and Aerosmith, like I said. You've got the active rock, which is more of a current sound, more of an updated sound of Foo Fighters, Korn, Perfect Circle, Cedar, Adelita's Way.
Right.
And then you've got the active rock versus the alternative. Like some of these alternatives will kind of ride the line between both genres, where it's maybe Foo Fighters into a Jack White song or Muse. Some of the great active rock bands I like. The heritage rock is, everybody likes that, the Beatles, and it's all it's so ingrained in our culture at this point. But if you look at like active rock bands, the newer bands, some of the ones I like are like 6 a.m., Foo Fighters, Adelita's Way has a new record that's really good, 30 Seconds to Mars, Perfect Circle. And then you've got AAA, which is great music as well, but it's a little bit more bluesy, folk-sounding things, bands like Revivalist, Death Cab for Cutie. Again, Jack White would fit in that category, Jack Johnson. And I think the bottom line is that where it fragmented was from classic rock, which just about everybody liked, into men versus women, young versus old, and that's what you're seeing on the radio now. And like in here in LA, we don't have an active rock station. We have KLOS, which is a heritage rock station, been around for years. The sound just recently is going away. Then of course there's K-Rock and KYSR, which is 98.7. And then, they're kind of a vintage alternative, back to that 90s Red Hot Chili Peppers. But, where's it going? I don't know. It's like I always say, if I had a crystal ball, I'd play the stock market. I wouldn't pick records. But
no, I do have a question though. Like with stations like K-Rock, did they change their format?
Well, I think they evolved. They evolved over time. And what happens is that I think we all go through this, where, we're born and we hear lullabies, and then we start to grow up, and, after our mom has been singing to us, and we watch the TV, and we watch Barney the Dinosaur, and the Wiggles, and then we get into pop music, and we're in the back seat of the car singing the most current pop song, and mom's singing along, and then we, as we become teens, we start to develop our identity in music, and we're influenced by our friends. Say, hey, this is a cool band, you got to hear these guys, and then you go off to college, and you start to get different influences from a more grown-up perspective. I think what in your high school years is where you really develop your preference of music, and then in college, and they call it taste freeze. I've heard that expression used by other people, where your taste freezes right there. Because after you're out of college, you get into the workforce, and women will have kids, and you start a family, and you get a mortgage, and then the next thing you know, you're back in the car with Barney the dinosaur, and you start kind of all over. And my job at All Access, I was the Hot AC editor, and so Hot AC is somewhere between pop and alternative and AAA and rhythmic and urban, and it's like kind of things just kind of filter through that format, and it's sort of like pop light, whereas pop top 40 charts and radio stations are trying to appeal to a younger demographic. Usually they'll be like the workstation in the daytime, and then the kids at night. And and hot AC stations will be more of an adult sound, a more mature sound for the people who have moved into that. I think our taste, even though I said that our taste freezes, it does change and it does evolve, and so K-Rock has to continually do research to see where the ball is going. So they're always doing research to determine how their fans are changing, and it changes daily. And I think that there's a difference between a fad and a trend. As a trend is a longer arc, and you just you see where the ball's going, and you try to be there first. That's the short answer.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel that has the message changed that's being delivered in rock music?
Yes. Well, in some ways. We used to have wine, women, and song, and now we have sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Okay.
So it's kind of the same, but it's a little different.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. Now, I remember it was I worked with rock acts back in the day, and I remember, certain individuals explaining about like panels, radio panels, with charts and different things like that. Like, you got to pick what area you're going to be in, and like I was trying to explain that fans, depending on what format you're in, can sometimes be unforgiving, because you have artists that want to jump over to different formats. They want to go over here, they want to go over here, they want to go over here, they want to go over here. Now, you understanding formats, could you elaborate on that? Is that a bad thing, switching formats, or, do they consider it that you're not true to your art? Could you just kind of break that down?
From the artist standpoint or the listener standpoint? From the artist
from
standpoint?
The listener, from the from a fan standpoint, basically.
Well, there was it was interesting that you said "unforget it." Is that would be the same as "remember," right?
I meant to say "unforgiving."
Unforgiving. Okay. I think that we all have to evolve. We can't keep doing the same thing. David Bowie said changes. Right. He said do something completely different and then change. So you have to keep moving forward. You can't be doing the same thing over and over again. And you know, some of your fans are going to say, "Oh, you sold out," and then you bring on new fans, and you know, you just say, "I have to keep doing something different." And look at that man. He I mean, talk about revolutionary. He made his passing a concept album. You know, as he was leaving this planet, he made an artistic statement about it. So kudos to him. You know, that's about as real as it gets.
Wow. You know, I mean, in your estimation, right? Now, when we look at being able to access your fans instantaneously, is there a good side and a bad side to that on the industry side?
I think it's nothing but good.
Okay.
Radio has really enjoyed this because you remember how you used to call into a radio station and get a busy signal and nothing would happen and
right.
You know, you get the jock on the phone and request a song and they say yeah I'll get that on and then it was just it was all programmed by the boss anyway, and so the jock didn't have much control and you know, you had the free form DJs like Jim Ladd and others, but it's come a long way with social media. It's really great that fans can now connect with their artists that they love, with the musicians that they love, and radio can now connect with their listeners. You know, I mean, I think you got a hold of me through Facebook, right? Yeah, I mean, it's really changed everything. It's really great. I look at social media as a way to keep up with people who have been in my life. So, you know, over my entire span of my life. So my cousin can be debating with a band member that I worked with in Ireland. you know, and it's just crazy to watch what happens. And of course, they're debating politics, but we won't go there. But yeah, I think it's great. I think that radio and musicians have benefited, and a lot of different industries have benefited, and the fans have benefited from social media, for sure.
Now, you are about to make a huge jump, right?
Oh, with I've already made the jump. I'm flying solo without a net right now.
Well, now, is this going to be industry-driven or fan-driven?
Both. I think the bottom line is it's not just about music. It's about just making the whole sharing process easier, simplifying it.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of different things on the internet that drive me crazy, you know? I think we all will agree that we hate pre-rolls, you know?
Right.
When you click on a video and it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
right.
Now you can listen to it, you know? And we're nobody's paying attention to the ad. They're just waiting for it to go away. And they hit that skip button as soon as they go, you know?
Everybody skips.
Yeah. Big data drives me crazy. You know how, like, you go on Amazon and you buy something, buy a teapot, for example, and it chases you around the internet for a week or two?
Yep.
You know, it's like, I already bought it. What are you doing? Everybody seems to want $10 a month. You know, hey, Ed, I'm gonna send you an article. and then the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, or whatever, they say, okay, Ed, you got the link from Mark. Now pay up. And paywalls, and it's like you need to subscribe, or it's only $3.99 for the rest of your life. So then you can read the article. So what do? You back out, you go Google, and you take the headline, you Google it, and then boom, just find it somewhere else. It's, people take the path of least resistance, and so I think whoever figures out how to fix these problems is really gonna do well.
I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that I went to the right website for listening to music. And what I saw is going to be it's going to be different.
You like my little logo?
Yes, I do. And it's just like, you're going to be dibbing and dabbing in so many different things, which I think is going to be fun. Because
I'm excited.
I guess sometimes, oh man,
can you tell?
And, it's like, I like certain social sites are okay. And I won't, I'm not one to throw anyone under the bus, basically. But there are some that is like, they don't care of the musician and the artist. And I'm hoping that something comes along where the artist is really the focus on making sure they get because I run into a lot of kids today, and the first thing they say to me, we're talking about, actual business, and they're like, I don't need to know all that. I just need to hit my fans and give them my song for free, and that's all I need to do, and I'll be rich. Now, what would you say to a statement like that?
Well, there's, no matter how good you are, there's always going to be a lot of competition, and I'm assuming that you have a lot of musicians listening to your radio show.
Yes.
And, that's all well and fine, but when you make this investment and I don't want to discourage anybody, I want to encourage people actually, but just the reality of it is that you work all your life to learn music. I'm a musician myself, and a songwriter, so I understand this personally. You work all your life to develop your craft. You go through a bunch of bands, and being in a band is like being married to 5 people. You invest all your money in your spare time into your love of the art of music, and then you make a record, and you spend a ton of money to make this record, and it all comes down to that point where you put it out, and boom, you get slammed down to the mat by Taylor Swift or Katy Perry, who are putting out a record the same week. And naturally, you don't give up. You have to dust yourself off, and I mean, these people are your competition. Lady Gaga, all these people that have all of this production behind them, and the machine, the music machine, and they're all
the magic word.
Yeah. It's like, Lady Gaga's worried that Ed Sheeran's going to come out with a record next week. You know what I mean? I mean, they're all competing with each other too, and you're competing with them. So this is where the competition is in the music business, and it's trying to get on that radio station, and streaming has democratized this to where you get on the radar of your fans through playlist and videos. And I had an artist come to me a couple years ago All right, we're going to give him a plug. Joaquin Torres. He's out there somewhere. But anyway, just had to do that. Sorry. So he comes to me and he says, what do I do? And I said, I went on YouTube and I looked you up and you don't have a video. I go, therefore, you do not exist in the eyes of your fans. You have 0 views because you don't have a video. And this is not something I manage. It's just a guy who came to me for advice. And I turned around, I pointed him in the right direction. I said, go. And it was really cool when he came back to me and he said, I took your advice and I made a video and I got 250,000 views and I'm super excited. And I met him the other night for the first time. It was really cool. And, this is not what I'm doing now. I'm not doing artist development, so I don't need 1 million people to send me demos right now. But if you're a well-established artist, we might be able to talk. But anyway, I love to help people follow their dreams, and I've done that with other people that, one guy wanted to be a songwriter and he wanted to write songs and I told him what to do and he came back a year later and said, I got a publishing deal. So
wow. Okay.
My advice for musicians is that you got to be yourself. You got to be unique. You can't try to sound like somebody else. And you just got to persist and you can't give up. And, obviously that means investing a lot of money over and over and over again. But you got to get yourself out there. You got to put all your eggs in one basket when you're breaking through. You got to find that song that works universally in all of these formats, or at least in a few. A lot of records start now at alternative, and they go to top 40 and Hot AC or urban and through rhythm and into pop. But to have the pop chart is sort of like the final destination, and
the holy
and that's
grail.
where that's the the final destination is AC is the easy listening upper demos Billy Joel and Elton John are there now, and great artists. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but these guys have been doing it 50 years, So the thing to do is to get that one song that really connects with people that you think is competitive with everything else that's out there. It's like, yeah, I can see my song being played between Ed Sheeran and the Revivalist, or Lady Gaga and Katy Perry. I can see my song working on this radio station. You find that one song and you do a great production on it, and you put it out there and you see what happens. And if it hits, you do it again. And you got to have a video. You got to have a social media presence. And it's got to be a song that stands the test of time, and it's got to be a song that you could play on the guitar without all the production values, and it still stands on its own as a song. In other words, like you could go into a radio station and play it on the air for your fans on your acoustic guitar with nothing else, just you and your voice and your acoustic guitar, or a beat, or a piano. Just pick one song that works across the board and put all your eggs in one basket.
It's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I have noticed as a trend is that I remember when artists used to take a song and just really, really put all their energy into that song that they thought was going to make it. And now you're inundated with like a single every other week. They're dropping this out, dropping this out, dropping this out, dropping this out, dropping this out. It's like, okay, which one is the current single that you really are putting the energy behind? Because all I see every other week is you're dropping a brand new one. I mean, would you consider that?
Yeah, like
good?
Drake is coming out with a song every week, and that's great. I mean, if you've got an audience that hungry and you can crank them out then go for it. I guess the music sort of becomes here today, gone tomorrow, because you're moving on to it's hard to have this legacy hit when you're doing that. Drake's had several. I'm not making him as an example. I'm just saying.
No,
that,
I get where you're coming from, though.
Mm-hmm. It takes about a year to break a record at radio, and you want to do it yourself, and you want to start small in your hometown, and you want to get your mom and your dad and your sister and their friends and your sister's groupie friends and all your buddies to come down to a show, and then they bring their friends, and two people tell two people, and it grows, and then you move to the next city and the next city and the next city, and you start getting on the radio stations in all those cities, and that's how you do it. And pretty soon, you're going to come on somebody's radar. And they're going to say, what's going on down here?
I'm hearing a lot about this guy in Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. I can't think of many that have broken out of there, Leonard Skinner, but...
Molly Hackett.
Yeah, there you go.
You are really giving our fans a complete education. Now, musically, what direction do you think, like production-wise, rock? Where do you feel rock is headed, production-wise, musically?
Well, it's kind of hard to top where we are at this point. It used to be really hard to get a good sound, and it's just become easier and easier, and with sampling, it used to be really hard to get a good guitar sound and a good drum sound, and now, a lot of the music you hear on the radio is written on a computer. Most of it, I think. And the guitar sounds are sampled so that you can dial in, a vintage amp, and you don't have to go out and rent it and worry about it breaking down and find the right microphone, But I think most bands have their own sound, and you look at a band like Rival Sons, they went back and they just got that vintage sound, or Greta Van Fleet, they just came back with kind of a Led Zeppelin, Black Crowes kind of vibe. I think these bands, they pick up on their influences, and it's great to see young people doing something more than just. I don't want to criticize any music, but disposable music, I guess I'd say. I got another Marxism for you. Here's another. I have these things called Marxisms, and they're like, some of them I made up, and some of them my dad made up, and here's another one. There are two types of music business. There's one business that is focused on the music, and another business that's focused on the business.
Yeah.
So, I think if you just do what comes from your heart, what that you want to do, and not try to be too calculated about it, it'll happen. And everybody does it different. Other people, they're all about the money. They're just like, I got to have a hit. So let me figure out how to. I don't care what I just want to have a hit. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and I think everybody's different. So.
Okay. Now, as far as labels, artists, what type of things would you say your new company is looking for? Partnerships, relationships.
Yeah, I'm consulting some small labels and management companies and artists.
Okay.
I think I'm doing it mostly to get. I've always done this. I've always done this on the side. I mean, I managed bands in the late 90s. That was kind of how I got into all this. I was a musician, and I decided to go back to college and get my degree. And while I was in college, I saw an ad for an internship, and it was at EMI Records, and it was one of the people working there at the time was Daniel Glass, and let's see. I went from there to Warner Brothers and got to hang out in listening parties for Prince and Seal, and work Madonna records, and and then I got to do a Beatles promo in the Capitol building, which was awesome. I worked for a management company. I worked everywhere while I was in school, and I was doing my research thesis, and it was funny how eventually I got in at a company called Radio and Records, and that was where I met Joe.
I remember them. R&R.
And that was the music trade at the time, and I was working there, and then went on to a management company. But then Joel was looking for somebody, and he remembered me, and he knew that I was working for a management company and promotion company calling radio, and I was local. He didn't have to move me. It's like, okay, let's have lunch, and boom, and here I am 20 years later. And I owe a lot of my experience to him. But back to your original question, I was trying to get in the music business by managing bands, and it's really tough out there in the trenches. Artist development is really hard. It's hard to, I spent a lot of time at Kinko's and a lot of money. Kinko's is now FedEx for people who don't show my age. But anyway, I eventually helped a band get signed to Atlantic Records, and another band got a little part on Buffy the Vampire show, and I ended up working with Dan Hills, a Grammy Award-winning artist in the management world, more as an assistant, not as his manager. But it was like the thrill of victory. It's like breaking a band, getting the record deal, and bringing it home. And then when you get the deal and you get on the record label, then it all starts over. It's like the competition, just like everything else that I was talking about earlier. As far as what I'm looking for, I'm more focused on the technology and the development of technology, and I'm going to be doing a little artist management to pay the bills. And consulting to pay the bills, and I don't know, I might pick somebody out there up in Uber one point in time. I don't know. But, it's not easy doing a startup and, talking to investors, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. This thing could all fall apart, and, I'll be back, trying to get my foot in the door somewhere. But I'm keeping my options open, If the right opportunity comes along, I'm definitely interested in looking at everything. But I'm a tech guy. I got an electronics degree too, and a business degree, and I just that's where I'm going, and that's where the world is going. I worked in music for 20 years, kind of been there, done that, and a lot of the jobs these days are in technology. So I wanna brush up on some of those skills. If there's something I don't know, then I get really like I need to learn it, and that's just the way I am. So.
Well, like I said, I want to thank you for joining me on E-Water Show and just being so candid and just open and sharing so much information that you shared tonight. I know my fans really, really appreciate it. And if we can do anything on this end, on my end, let me know. We're here for you, And
that's awesome.
Again, congratulations on the new venture. And I know it's going to be great. You're going to be successful. You're going to continue. It's just the next chapter. That's all. So
I got a lot of love behind me. I tell you. If I could, could I end it with a few predictions for what's coming down the road?
Sure.
How much time?
There it is.
All right.
60 seconds.
All right. Well, okay. The changes that are here now, obviously people say streaming is the future. I say streaming is the present. It's awesome. It's a great way to discover music. Alexa's changing how people access music. SiriusXM is now has a stake in Pandora, so that'll be interesting. Shazam is talking about doing a radio rating system with cell phones. And I think the record companies are going to figure out how to sell us our collections again. Files will not become obsolete because if you don't have a file, you can't stream. So,
that's it.
I think that we're going to start moving into more high definition and higher quality files and streaming as we go into the future.
All right.
I hope
compression
will become obsolete.
Mark Strickland, and we are out of here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. And I sent you a couple articles too that I mentioned during the call.
I will check it out. Thank you.
All right. Take care.